is Coach Lynn Richardson. You are in the right place at the right time, and I am so excited to be here with you to talk about a topic that is important, but it is also a topic that we are revisiting. It's time to line up. Maybe we didn't do what we were supposed to do in terms of our New Year resolutions, but guess what? It's never too late to line up and to start following your marching orders. And so since we are talking about marching orders, we would not be in order if we did not go back to the very beginning and go back to the very basics of this whole wealth, wisdom, expansion, assets, love, theology, and health movement that we have been sharing. So I'm just so excited to be here with you. I sent out a Facebook message earlier, and I also sent out a REAP message earlier, and it basically said, you know, a lot of us get in the habit of beating up on ourselves. We say, by now I should have become rich. By now I should have had children. By now I should be married. By now I should be operating in my gift. By now I should be doing A. By now I should be doing B. And all of these by nows make us get a little bit impatient. And sometimes we're ready to jump up and we're ready to move before it's time. But here's the reality. Your by now isn't God's by now. And he's only underwriting one vision, his. So if we are afflicted with the illness of by now, then why don't we start talking about some very, very basic things that can bring us back into alignment with by now, and then let by now meet us when we least expect it. Many of us have talked about by now I should have had my finances in order. And I'll say one thing. We're right. We should have our finances in order. We should know what to do to get our credit straight. We should know what to do to live below our means. We should know what we need to do to stop living upside down, to stop living in the expectation of other people, and to live within the provision that God has provided for us. Peacefully, in joy, in harmony, and with an attitude of prosperity. Well, how do you do that? It all goes back to the basics. If you've ever heard me talk a little bit about living check to Monday, you know that I was, making $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a month. It didn't matter how much it was because I was always broke at the end of the month. I was always broke on payday. Sometimes I wouldn't even make it to Monday. One of my listeners called into my radio show at that time and said, Lynn, you need to write a new book, not Live and Check to Monday, Live and Check to 2 o'clock. And I said, you know what? I heard that. That's when you get paid on Friday, and by 2 o'clock you are broke. So we know that more money will never solve a money problem. And we're facing all kind of things. We're facing job loss. We're facing the fact that I have all of these assets. I've got this house. I've got these cars. I've got these expenses. I have a spiritual life. I have expenses for my children. Somebody's in college. How am I going to manage all of this? What am I going to do? Well, here's the first rule. We're going to start to live below our means because by now we should be sick and tired of being sick and tired. You can write that one down. I gave you that one for free. By now we should realize that there is nothing new under the sun. By now we should realize that every trick that is out there, every scam, it may have short-lived prosperity. It may cause us short-lived success. It may even cause us a temporary period where we feel like we are on top of the world. But if it is not grounded in truth, then guess what? It is going to come crashing down. I remember back in the day being in the real estate industry and people wanting to get their home, and they'd come to me and they didn't want to do the mortgage approval plan. They didn't want to work on their credit. They didn't want to call their creditors and pay their bills. They wanted to go to the credit repair company that would erase everything. I heard about this company. They can delete stuff off your credit report because if they didn't report it right, then they don't have to put on your credit report. Well, have we ever thought about this? Do you owe the people? What about that? Forget the fact that they didn't report it right, or maybe they messed up, or they didn't send you a letter by the 31st day, or whatever the case may be. So now we're going to go find grounds to make what we owe other people not legitimate for our own selfish benefit. And so I know lots of people who went and got their credit fixed, got their house, and wound up right back in the same situation. So guess what? By now, we should be tired of using old tricks. By now, we should be ready. Our ears should be open to hear what thus saith the Lord about our finances. By now, we should be ready to do the real thing. And let me tell you, I was living that lifestyle, and I was miserable, living up to people's expectations of me, trying to fall in alignment with the image that I had set before the world. People knew that I had high-paying jobs and all of these things, so I was expected to do certain things. Let me tell you one of the places that will get you quicker than any place. Now, everybody knows that I believe that we live by the 10-10-30-50, so we're just going to do a brief review of the 10-10-30-50. And the 10-10-30-50 says this, and for some of you, you are my Wealth University students, so yours may be adjusted. You may be living on the 10-5, 25-70 or something like that, or 60. You may be on the 10-10-20-60. But for all intent and purposes, I'm just going to give the basic rule that I've discussed not only in my book but also in issues of Essence Magazine, or if you've heard me on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, whatever the case may be. The 10-10-30-50. When we get our paycheck, the first 10% we're going to tithe. And I'm going to reiterate this, but I'm going to also share something else with you about tithing. So some of you may be saying, I already know this, I already do that, but I got some more news for you as it relates to tithing and giving. So the first 10% you tithe, and here's the reason why. You're broke whether you tithe or not, so you might as well tithe so at least you can have God on your broke side. You know, it's not like if you keep the tithing money, you straight. You are still in dire straits, as a matter of fact. I was living that lifestyle. I was making six figures, but when I looked at my paycheck and my bills was way more than my paycheck. So I started tithing simply for that reason, because nothing else I was doing was working. So the first 10% you tithe. But here's something else that also happens. I had a young lady, she wanted to get her money straight, and she wanted to get enrolled in Wealth University, and she wanted to change her life, and she wanted to do some things differently. And she was all ready. And then I called her, or she called me a couple of days after the New Year, and something had happened. On New Year's Eve, she had been called to sow a seed. And so because she believed in the blessings that, you know, was coming her way, she sold all of her seed. She pretty much gave everything that she had. Now, I am not trying to interrupt a conversation that you are having with God. Trust me, that is not what I'm trying to do. But if you have already given your tithe and your offering, or whatever the case may be, just because the leader says to you, come and give some more, just because the man on TV says to you, come and give some more, if you look at your situation, it is time for you to pray to God and say, God, you know, I have given, but every single penny is allocated toward my light bill, my gas bill, this, that, and the other. Then you are not to be obligated to go and give beyond your means. Giving beyond your means. I know many people who are upside down and they're still giving extra. God wants us to be right side up. First, he wants us to operate in truth. Because let me tell you something. And there's a story about this in the Bible that, you know, there was a couple, and they had talked about what they were going to give, and what they said they were going to give wasn't really what they gave, but they were giving an image, so they wanted to live up to that image. And when they walked into the place of worship, the man lied and he dropped dead, and then the wife came in after him. She didn't know her husband had died. But she walked in and they asked her, well, how much did you give? And she lied again, and she dropped dead too. So here's the deal. Lots of times we are going to give, and we know we don't have it, but out of guilt, or because we don't want to be seen by the other members of the church or the parishioners, or because people have expected us to do a certain thing, or we drive a certain car, then we're expected to give at this amount. You're not to give out of guilt. You are not to give out of keeping up your image. And you are certainly not to give when it is a lie. So you're living by the 10-10-30-50, 10-10-30, 10-10-30-50, the first 10% you tithe. But once you tithe and you do that, then you've got to ask for wisdom and discernment over what to do with the rest. Let me tell you something. I tithe even when I was on food stamps. Yes, I did. I gave my 10% if I could give a little bit more. And how did I always assess if I was going to give a little bit more? If I could go to the drive-thru at McDonald's and spend $15, then I should be able to give another $15. If I couldn't do it, then I didn't do it. That's when I was in a really, really tough situation. But I have also been in situations when I've been at church and I've been in a situation and they say, okay, everybody get a $200 seed or a $500 seed. And there are times when I've sat there because you know what? I didn't have it. And I was not going to stand up just so I could be seen. I was not going to stand up just so I wouldn't be embarrassed. I was not going to stand up even though they knew Lynn Richardson is sitting here. She's the mortgage guru. She's written all the books. Da, da, da. We know she's going to stand up. No, I'm not going to lie. I knew that I had given within the level that was appreciative and that was acceptable to God. And guess what? I was okay with that. It did not matter what man had to say. So by now, we should be tired of trying to live up to other people's expectations. By now, we should be tired of trying to keep up with the Joneses. Keep up with yourself. Know who you are. Stand rightfully in authority, flat foot on the ground in who you are, what you can do, and don't fret about who thinks anything about where you are or where you're going. Sure, you've got a big house. Sure, you're driving nice cars. Sure, you're doing all of these things. Sure, you've got X, Y, and Z coming in. But people don't know when if they look at your bank account that you're really upside down. So by now, we should be tired of living a lie. We want to live in truth. They say that the truth will set you free. Well, let me tell you something. That's a statement that is cliche, but let me tell you something. It is so true. Ever since I stopped trying to impress people and buy people with money, ever since I started saying it's not in my budget, ever since I adopted Susan Taylor's phrase, no is a complete sentence, ever since I simply began to operate in the truth, God by now began to show up for me when I least expected it because he knew he could trust me. See, here's the real deal. Let's say you are doing all of your giving and your philanthropy or whatever, and you're giving and, it's in alignment with God, but then you go and you give some more to please man, but you know that it's not in your budget. So when you get home, you're stressed out over your bills because you did too much over here or there. That's not being a good steward over our resources. And what God is saying, because you're saying, well, I'm giving to God. No, you were giving to God because man told you to. There's a difference. So I've talked often, and you guys know that, yes, flat foot, undeniably, absolutely, positively, our first 10%, and there's evidence all over the Word, all the Old Testament, the New Testament, and then there's scripture that will connect you from the Old Testament to the New Testament. I saw a post by somebody who said something, they quoted a scripture out of the Old Testament, and they said this was before Jesus. What they don't realize is Jesus was in Genesis. When Abraham met the Melchizedek priest on the way and he gave him a tenth, who do you think that was? Hebrews tells us that Jesus was of the Melchizedek order. There was only one. So we're living by the 10, 10, 30, 50. By now, we need to simply follow the rules because nothing else is going to last. So the first 10%, we tithe. The next 10% we save. And I'm going to give you a different perspective on saving too because I know you've heard me talk about this before. But by now, we should have gotten it. And if by now we have it, then we need some additional enlightenment. So the first 10%, whatever money you get, I don't care if you are on food stamps, unemployment, whatever your situation is, the first 10% you are tithing. The next 10% you're going to save. Now, again, if you are my client, and we have worked out something different because you've got some money coming out of your 401k, and so we would change your 10% to 5%. I'm not talking to you. But just in general, when you get your money, if you're starting from scratch, the first 10% you tithe, the next 10% you save. Why is saving important? And I know you're saying to yourself, Lynn, I don't have any money to save. I'm jacked up. My bills are up to here. I cannot do it. I cannot afford to do it. I just can't do it. Here's the deal. You've got to save yourself. See, God has given you the wisdom and the discernment and the basic survival mechanism. It's called survival instinct. It's survival skills. And that's what saving does. Remember in the book of Genesis, and I don't care if you read the Bible or not, you went to Sunday school, we know about Joseph and his brothers. And Joseph was sold off into slavery, or they left him, and and eventually he wound up being in Pharaoh's kingdom. How did he wind up being the leader and the ruler over Pharaoh's kingdom? Well, guess what? It's because of his wisdom. See, Joseph had a dream, and he knew that there was a famine coming in 7 years. That's right. There was going to be a famine all over the land. There was going to be a famine. And so in order to prepare for the famine, they stored a fifth of everything that they had during the years of abundance. Have you ever had years of abundance? Have you ever had seasons of abundance? Has God ever blessed you with anything? I know he's blessed me. Have you ever been in a situation where you prayed, Lord, if you get me out of this, I will never get back in this situation again? Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. And what happens when we get back in there? Lord blesses us and we get out of that situation. He come tapping us on our shoulder. We act like we don't even know who he is. And guess what? Then the whipping begins. You want to know what I'm talking about? Well, when I was a little girl, my grandmama used to whip me with a switch. That's right. Go outside, get the little branches, honey, and sometimes she'd be whipping me, and there would be leaves and everything all over the stuff. And if it would be 4 or 5 of them, every time I got hit one time, it would seem like I got hit 25 times. But that's when Mama whoops you. But what about when Daddy whoops you? My husband has rarely ever had to spank my children, but when he does, their feelings are hurt more so. It's like, Daddy? So guess what? When your Father in heaven whoops on your butt because we've been disobedient? So Joseph stored a fifth. That's 20%. I'm suggesting that you save 10% of every penny you earn. Why? Because there is going to be an emergency. Something is going to break down. Someone is going to get sick. There is going to be an unexpected expense. Something is going to happen. And by now, we should be tired of running around robbing Peter to pay Paul. By now, we should be tired of going to the payday loan store. By now, we should be sick and tired of being sick and tired and always being in a position where we have nothing stored up. How old are you? 20, 30, 40, 50? Take that number and multiply it times 365 days. That's how long you've been alive. So if you're 40, that means you've been living on this earth 14,600 days. Even if we just had $1 for each day we've been alive, we should be set with $14,000 in the bank. I know we didn't start that early. We didn't know this, that, and the other. But now is the time. See, we want to walk upright. By now, we should be tired of walking around with our heads down because we don't have the money that we think we're supposed to have. By now, we should be tired of going to the bank looking for the program for the people with bad credit. By now, we should be walking in the door saying, you know what? I've got a 750 credit score. Tell me what your rates are. We should be able to walk in power. Now, I'm not talking to you. I'm not talking at you. I'm speaking with you. Because I know, been there, done that. I understand. By now, it is time for us to line up. Now, this next 30% is going to be cash. And again, if you are my client and I've had a private review of your situation, we've had our private session, or if our private session is coming up, then your numbers may be a little bit different. You may be 10, 10, 20, 60, or you may be 10, 5, 25, something. But 10, 10, 30, 50. The first 10% you tithe. The next 10% you save. The next 30% is cash in your pocket. Why does it need to be cash in your pocket? Because until you break your spending addiction, you will never overcome your financial situation, and you will always be saying, by now, I should have. You go to the grocery store like I did one year. I had $100 cash in my pocket. When I got to the cash register, I had $200 worth of stuff. You've probably heard me say this before, but I now want you to take this in. This is real. What would I have done if I had a credit card, debit card, or a check? You're right. I would have started writing, or I would have started swiping. Why? Because my pride would not have wanted me to stand there looking like I couldn't pay. Or I simply would have forgotten my budget and I want all of this stuff, or it's on sale. Let me help you understand something. If it ain't free, it ain't on sale if it ain't in your budget. Write that down. Now I'm going to give you that one for free. If it ain't free, It ain't on sale if it ain't in your budget. So I had $100 cash. I had $200 worth of stuff, roughly. I had to put stuff back. I was embarrassed. People were looking at me. I was looking at them. So until you develop a relationship again with money, see, by now we should know that there is no pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. By now we should know that chances are I'm not going to find a sugar daddy or a sugar mama. By now we should know I am not going to win the lotto. And even if I do, by now we should know that whatever you do with $1, you will do with 10 of them, 100 of them, 1,000 of them, or 1,000,000 of them. So we want to change what we do. And by now we should realize that we need to rebuild a relationship with money. I need to touch $1. Some people say, I don't put cash in my pocket because it goes too fast. Yes, it goes fast if you also have your credit card, debit card, and your check. What I'm suggesting is that you leave them at home. Yes, leave your credit card, your debit card, and your checkbook at home. While you are in this period, just try it with me for the next 2 weeks. Just try it. Leave them at home. I'm going to leave mine at home too. If the thought of leaving them at home scares you, then by now you should know you have a problem. Yes, it's okay. Well, what if I get into an emergency? Well, that's probably not going to happen. You're probably going to be okay. But if you get an emergency, call somebody. Call me. I know people all over the country. Whether you're in Chicago, New York, wherever you are, I'll get somebody to come and get you. But leave that stuff at home. I've got a good girlfriend, colleague, sister friend, client. She's been, listening to the principles and doing this for some time. And I used to tell her, I said, let me tell you something. If we don't learn how to manage our money, when we have an abundance, God will show us how to manage it by giving us very, very little of it. She called me. We talked. She said, Lynn, I have had $4 since for the past 10 days. I haven't spent a penny. Do you want to get down to $2 so you can prove that you can hold on to it and manage it? So what I'm suggesting right now is that we all build a new relationship with money. Because when you have $50 in your pocket, in your envelope, I'm going to tell you to go old school, put it in your envelope. And you know that this is all I have for gas for the month. Guess what? You're going to be selective about where you drive. But if you know you can swipe that debit card, well, there's no sense of boundaries. If you know that all you have in your money is $40 for lunch money for the rest of the month, that's it. Chances are you are not going to the Cheesecake Factory or the Grand Lux Cafe with your friends for lunch. You're not going to do it. If you know that all you have is what you have in your pocket, your mind is going to change. Now, let me help you understand something. By now, you should know you are going to be tempted to want to go get that debit card. You're going to find reasons. One of my clients said, you know what, I don't want to carry cash because I might get robbed. You ain't getting robbed. Come on now, y'all. We start coming up with all kind of stuff. And even if you do get robbed, if they really want your money, they will kidnap you and make you go to a gas station and stand there with a gun to your head and tell you, you better have some money in there. You better get it out. Don't play with me. So it's better for them to take whatever little cash you got. I'm not saying put $1,000 in your wallet. I'm saying, what do you need for the day? $10? Put that in your pocket. Leave everything else at home. If you're afraid to do it, by now you should know you need to do it. And the remaining 50% stays in your checking account for your bills. That's how this goes. First 10% you tithe. You tithe and you give. But you don't then give way beyond your means because you're trying to please the pastor, or you're trying to please the people, or you're trying to please you. If everybody else is standing up, you got to stand up. I know so many people who've done that. We are not to give. I don't believe the Lord blesses that kind of giving. Yes, give. Yes, bring your 10%. Yes, give to the capital campaign or the building fund or whatever those things. Yes, do that. But you also know what you're facing when you get home. So if we're giving out of guilt or we're giving to please people, then we may not be giving at all. Tithe your first 10%. Pray about anything additional beyond that. If we were 100% tithers in the kingdom, the church wouldn't have to worry about anything. We wouldn't have to worry about building funds. We'd be able to feed the homeless. We'd be able to do that. So let's get consistent on that. Your next 10% you save, 30% cash in your pocket, and the remaining 50% for your bills. By now, it's time for all of us to grow up. By now, it's time for us to do what we know in our heart is the real, true thing, and that's live below our means. By now we know that none of these scams, none of these extra things work. By now, it is time to let some stuff go. So I want you to pray about clarity, about vision, about what God wants for your life. Because all you have to do is make a decision to be obedient to His will for your life and just walk in it. And guess what? His by now will show up when you least expect it. Email me, coach@lynnrichardson.com. If you were saying, by now, I've had enough and I need some help, I'd love to help you. Or text me, 708-243-7925. God bless you. Bye-bye.